Come, walk down the winding path. Don't mind the spooks and monsters. They stay hidden within the trees. There are mysteries in this world that you need to know, and paranormal truths that need to be told. Come, step up into the caravan while we share tales of old, as well as new accounts about things you thought only existed in your nightmares.
Thank you for stopping by the Caravan of Lore. Please take a moment to review our presentation and rate us on your favorite listening platform. And remember, you can be an integral part of the show by becoming our patron. You can follow us at the Caravan Library of Lore group page on Facebook or the Caravan of Lore on both Instagram and Twitter. If you have had an experience or peculiar event happen to you, please feel free to share. Just visit for all the information just mentioned at caravanoflore.com. Tonight we revisit a vintage episode when Linda Godfrey stopped by the Caravan of Lore.
Yeah, you and myself, we met at up in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. I think that was about a year ago at the Historical Society. And I was so happy when I turned around because, you know, I had to take front row. And I just had this big smile on my face when I turned around and I saw that the room was standing room only. You drew in such a wonderful crowd of people and the stories that you shared. And I'm hoping that you would share the story, which I will call it the mist. It was a couple of pictures that you showed the audience that I don't think many of our listeners are very familiar with. Would you mind sharing that story with us?
Well, actually, it's a series of stories. It is detailed in my Monsters Among Us book, just in case I don't get to all points or the listeners are more curious about it. But it was something that began showing up in trail cams on a regular basis at this hay farm where I've been assisting the property owner for several years because he started having weirdly mutilated animals. And he happens to be right out by Bray Road. And he's a retired physics and math teacher from Chicago, or the Chicago area, and had never heard of the Bray Road. And he started asking the neighbors, you know, why am I finding like a raccoon with a slit from its throat down to its lower parts and the insides neatly scooped up and laid beside it? And they would kind of laugh and say, well, you live right where the Beast of Bray Road is. Not on Bray Road, but right in that vicinity. And so he looked it up and found me, and I began assisting him. And we realized that right from the get-go, every once in a while, the trail cams would show what we call the mist. Now, by that, I don't mean an actual, you know, waterborne, foggy type of mist, but it's some sort of a translucent substance. Because it doesn't matter if it's sunny or rainy or whatever the weather is, it'll still show up, but it's not visible to the naked eye. And one of the first cases happened when he decided to find out what sort of thing was mutilating these smaller animals on his farm by bringing in some bigger ones. And so he began collecting deer carcasses, roadkill, from certain spots in Illinois. And at the time, it was very legal for him to take a roadkill one with a permit, put it on his own truck, drive it to Wisconsin, and put it on his own property. And he had a 60-pound deer that was laid in approximately the same spot he had found that raccoon, on a tree line to the one of the edges of his field, and he had set up a trail camera that was motivated by heat and by motion, maybe about 6 feet or so from it. So when you view the film, and I think I had some of this particular one in my book, and I've put other ones on my blog. When you view the film, there's nothing happening. You can see the deer legs are just kind of lying there, sticking out, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and this is daylight, this translucent column-shaped form that just looks like mist that's been, jello molded into a form, sort of. And it's a little more amorphous than that, but pretty much a column shape has formed over that spot, right over the grass where the deer is, so that the deer is blotted out. You can't see the legs sticking out anymore. And it stays there for about half an hour and shoots maybe 90-some shots, because this particular one, I believe, was taking 3 shots a second. So it's like bing, 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 and then something else rips it off for a solid half hour. And then, all of a sudden, there was no fading of the substance or anything like that. Suddenly, there's a new photo, and it's gone. It's completely gone. Everything is sharp and clear again, and the deer legs are also gone. Mm-hmm. Now, when he went out and discovered this, he didn't realize, the mist was there immediately. He saw the deer was gone, and he's like, huh, where's the deer? And he had a friend with him, and they saw that there were large 5-toed canine tracks leading away from that spot over and through a barbed wire fence into the adjoining field. And then the track continued, and they were only hind leg prints. It was a bipedal creature, walking on its hind legs, and evidently must have been carrying that deer carcass either over its shoulder or somehow in its four limbs, I should say, which is pretty creepy. Right. But he's pretty brave. He's a big guy. He's about 6'2", and he had his friend with him, and they tracked it all the way across this other field till it came out at a road, and then they lost where it went and were creeped out enough that they decided to return. And this sort of thing happened several times, and then I found out from another researcher and also from another incident that this was not the first happening of the column-shaped translucent substance forming and appearing over a carcass. Right. And that started creeping me out. And since then, I have found really numerous other references to it in other researchers' books that I hadn't seen or didn't know existed. And I guess, it's a thing. It's not just like a one-off it's something it's not like there's no there. There is a there, in other words. Right. And the same translucent substance, sometimes it's colored, has shown up to different people around the area, too. There is a man who is a retired Racine County sheriff's deputy, just recently retired early. He's not elderly or anything. And there's a place in Burlington, Wisconsin, which is maybe 10 miles east of Bray Road. It's not very far. That has all manner of strange happenings. It's a kind of a nature preserve right out of town, and it's very marshy. And there's a hilly woods that locals call the Burlington Vortex because very strange things happen there. And this patrolman had decided to go and park in the gravel driveway right in front of a marsh next to that vortex woods because he was looking for a quiet place to sit and write his reports and do his computer work. So he's sitting there, and again, this is daylight. He's got his computer on, and, all the things are humming in the squad car that you'd usually have on. And all of a sudden, something catches his attention, and he looks up over this vast marsh that he's parked in front of, and he sees this green-tinted, translucent substance with kind of defined edges around it. It wasn't just like some amorphous normal mist that sort of hangs around. It was a defined, translucent substance that was heading right for him and his squad car. And he was pretty taken aback, and he sat there trying to think what it was, because it's coming right across the marsh, not deviating, straight for him, hits the squad car, and as it does, it rolls right through the squad car, and everything electronic shut off. The ignition went off, the computer went off,
boy.
Yeah, can you imagine? And you're sitting out there, sure, he's armed and everything, but what are you going to shoot? It's a mist.
Yeah, right.
Or it's a translucent substance. And as he's sitting there, it went through the car, and then it turned. It made a right angle turn, which anybody who's watched a fog roll in anywhere knows that they're not defined masses,
Right.
and they don't take right angle turns. This thing took a right angle turn, which happened to be on the path that leads up to this woods that's called the Vortex Woods, where there have been sightings of Bigfoot, and I think perhaps, well, not right in there, but nearby, of the Dogman or Wolfman or whatever you wish to call him. So he realized later that he also was missing some time from this episode that he couldn't explain about 20 minutes. And just in that time, for him it was a seamless movement of the thing rolling over his car and then exiting up the path. But now he thinks it stayed in the car. He was not conscious of time pass during that period, and then it went up the hill. He actually had this happen to him a second time. Maybe he speculated maybe it was because it had marked him somehow, or he knew it. But Burlington, Wisconsin has two lakes. There's another one on the other side of town. So he thought, well, this time he'd like to park near water or natural scenes, And he thought, well, this time I'm going over to that lake, and I'm staying right by the water. So he did that, and again he sees this mist coming toward him, and the same thing happened. Came right through the car, shut off the electronics. And he had, I think, a shorter period of missing time, but it was still missing. And this slightly colored mist, again, I found when you're not looking for something, you can have a book for 10 years and just keep passing by the same thing that's in there. I started realizing and seeing the same exact thing, usually either a greenish tinted mist or just translucent, occasionally maybe a golden color. And in every case, it does the same thing. It will roll in, roll through, shut off electronics, and then keep going or do something else. It's not just a singular thing from this one little area in Wisconsin.
Wow. Yeah, it makes me wonder if it's, absorbing electronic energy of some sort to feed.
Right.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows?
Like an energy vampire.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Thank you for doing that. But still, now I would be terrified to have something like that, and I don't know. I may just move into a concrete bunker 12 feet below ground and live there for it's very. It's just a scary moment altogether. But I remember reading that story. But wow.
Well, he did retire early and move to another state.
I can't say I blame him.
No, but he and his partner, between the two of them, saw a total of 4 different upright wolf-like canines during the time that he served, and 2 of them were in. There's a very vast nature preserve kind of to the east of Burlington called the Bong Recreation Area, which people shouldn't laugh. Refers to Richard Bong, who was a World War II highly decorated war hero and aviator. And this is kind of a strange little thing in itself, because that was intended by the government to be an Air Force base, and they were going to be watching air traffic, and they had it all set up to be a very high-tech place. Had it all set to go, had dug all these underground massive tunnels beneath the surface. And the day before, they were supposed to pour all the concrete for all the runways. For some reason, that project was just shut down, just stopped. They covered up most of the holes, not all of them. I know people who used to go, after that was closed, area teens decided it was a great party place, and I literally know people who used to go there and party down in those tunnels. You can't get in them anymore. But the local legend about it, or the local rumor about it, was that the government people who came out to actually inspect it before the concrete was laid saw things that they did not want to be out and about. In other words, those tunnels were inhabited by things running around. Now you can put two and two together and think, well, this guy who's parking at odd times out at this now nature area saw two unknown upright canines, as if this was sort of their territory. It was kind of how he felt. And then we had these huge tunnels. They probably have hidden openings. I would guess that not all of the openings were, large stealable doors, because you normally have air vents and things like that most people wouldn't get in and out of, but other things perhaps could. So you can put two and two together and kind of come up with your own ideas.
Well, sure. I've been out to the Bong Recreation Area a number of times. Of course, you and I don't live that far apart from each other. But I've been out there a number of times to watch the hang gliders out there because there's a hilly area, and it's great for those that do hang glide. But I had no idea the history that was involved there. May have taken a bit of a closer look. Not that I would be volunteering to go into any one of those tunnels myself without an entire team to go in there also, but wow, that's fascinating.
Right.
Now I'm starting to wonder, are these, subterranean dwellers, and that they come out at night? Do you know if either one of those two retired officers, if they continued their investigation into what these are, or did they just witness it and that was enough for them?
Well, they kind of began to be on the lookout. At one time, both of them saw one of the upright creatures in the Kettle Moraine State Forest. Well, they were actually out looking for turkey hunting places, and then as they were kind of planning, both of them, to retire, and I did quite a bit of field work with them both before, and I've been to where he retired up there and with my husband, and so I've been in the field with both of them a fair amount, and they're still actively looking. They both have seen, well, especially the one who had the green mist, has seen Bigfoot a couple of times too.
Wow.
Twice it was just real full out views. Yeah. So some people just, it's like once you become aware of certain anomalies, it's like you form a two-way street, and they are aware of you. And I hear that over and over again. I have found that to be happening if I'm not careful in my own life. I have experiences. I try not to connect with them too strongly, because you may not like the effects. And a lot of people report illness, and my health, frankly, over the past decade has not been. I've had some really strong health challenges, and you just have to wonder. I can think of other reasons that I would have them, but then you just have to wonder sometimes how much worse it was, or how much these things do influence. Right.
No, and I do know a number of people and stories where they have experienced some physical anomaly that is not normal after they've had a specific type of an encounter. And it just, I have a feeling that all this stuff is linked together somehow, that there's a common thread that ties, the UFO sightings, the orb sightings, the mist, the Bigfoot, and the upright canine. I have this overwhelming compulsion to say I believe that there's a connecting string between all of this that ties it all together. Not that it's all from the same place, but kind of like the domino effect, where one thing is affecting the next, and it just moves down the chain, and somehow we're on the outside of that as an observer, watching all these things that we don't understand. And wow.
It certainly seems that way. I mean, you really have to start thinking that. And the Monsters Among Us book, one of the things that I did toward that end, because I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, what if every report that we had, at least those where people exactly knew the date, where it wasn't like 20 years ago and they weren't sure, even what time of year it was anymore, but where they know the date and they have a specific location, you can go online now and use all these wonderful tools. NewFork and MUFON and BFRO all have massive databases where you can find whether there was a UFO report in that vicinity at that time, whether there was a Bigfoot seen. You can go to government sites and find out whether there were solar flares. You can discover what phase the moon was in. And for every account like that where I had a specific date and place, I went and did those things. And it was kind of cool. I actually was having fun finding these correlations, and it was surprising how often they did show up. And, I discovered that solar flares, brightness of solar flares, seem to have more influence than the phases of the moon. And within the phases of the moon phases at 3/4 size were much more frequent than full moons, which surprises a lot of people.
Yeah, I remember you telling us that at that conference, and I was kind of taken back by that too. But again, okay, so the full moon has a greater gravitational pull on us, but that might not be what it actually is that would create a little bit more of activity. Sure, 3/4 moon, why not? Maybe that's the perfect amount of gravitational pull to create this activity. Who knows? But yeah, I found that fascinating too when you brought that up for the first time. I'm like, And the Monsters Among Us book, I'm actually, I have started that again. I went through the whole book, and now I'm hitting stories here and there. It's a fascinating read. It really is.
Thank you.
Great collaboration of stories. Great collaboration. Do you have a favorite? Just out of curiosity, do you have a favorite of story that you may have put in any of your books?
Oh, wow.
Or what's your favorite child, Linda?
Yeah, exactly. I love them. Yeah, it's hard. It really is hard to say because I've just encountered some amazing things, and people have shared such extraordinary experiences with me over the years. I do have to say, some of the ones that have happened to me personally, I can't help being most affected by because it happened to me, and I knew what it was, where I've had, you had mentioned before, and since we're on this topic of the farmer field and the mist type things, where in that same field, the owner and a colleague of ours and I all witnessed a white spheroid lighted object that came right up to our car. And maybe if you'd like, I could tell about that one.
Oh, absolutely. Please do, because I love that story, and I know our listeners will too.
Well, because it seems, that field has so much anomalous light activity, and the owner has literally thousands of trail cam photos where something is setting it off. We don't know exactly what. And many times they do appear in and seem to be in connection with fresh carcasses that are put out. And at this time, and I believe it was about 2 years ago, it was in August 2 years ago, he had set out probably one of the last of his carcasses that he put out, and it was a larger one. It was a nice 180-pound deer in good shape, and nothing was touching it. Now, normally when anything like that is out there, especially in this kind of very rural area, there would be different kinds of raptor birds, skunks, raccoons, coyotes, you name it. Everything that comes along and feeds on carrion will be there. Nothing was touching this. And I said to the owner one day, I said, maybe there's something bigger coming out and scaring away all these other things that would normally be coming to eat it. What if we sat out for a few hours after dark, and I'll get another pair of eyes and we'll just watch and see if we can spot anything in the field. So we did that, and we were actually sitting in my colleague's car. He was in the front seat. These are two big guys with long legs, so I let them sit in the front, and I sat. I'm quite short, so I sat in the back where it doesn't bother. I kind of like to be able to look out the rearview window anyway, because I'm convinced that things come up behind you when you're least expecting them, and everybody's always looking forward. So we're sitting out there.
You're a really smart girl there, Linda.
Well, if you listen to animal stories and I really do seek out true stories of known animals so that you can understand how regular animals behave, so when you are seeing something that's out of the ordinary. So anyway, we're sitting out there, and it was a nice evening. We could, with very clear visibility, and I was kind of watching. There was a line that was sort of a regular flight pattern, it looked like, of airplanes coming along over the tree line, and we were on the opposite side of the field where the carcass was set. And I was watching these lights, and all of a sudden one of the lights stopped just in midair, and then it went backwards, not just like a little jiggle, but I mean it definitely stopped, and then it definitely moved backwards, as if it was zipping along, and kind of went, huh? What's that sitting over there? And we kept describing feelings to it like that, which was weird also. But I said, guys, that thing right there is not an airplane. And they both looked, and when the three of us laid our attention upon it, which may have been significant, I don't know if these things are, awakened by human attention or consciousness, has been suggested by some other researchers. It started heading at a slow, steady rate right across the field for us, sort of like the way that green mist, the column or shapes, came across the field or the marsh to the deputy. It was coming straight across the field for us at a level height. It wasn't zigzagging. It wasn't, doing anything or floating around like you'd expect if it was marsh gas or, some explanation like that. And we were just, and it didn't take all that long either. And so while it was coming at us, we were all just trying to get a fix on it. We're saying things like, what is that thing? Do you see what it's doing? And, where it's coming for us. And, the tension is sort of building. And then all of a sudden, it stopped. We estimated 25 to 30 feet away from the car and maybe about the same amount in the air. And it looked to us like it would be about the size of a basketball if you could jump up and hold it, which none of us were wanting to do. And it just stopped and was staring at, well, it wasn't staring because it didn't have eyes, but we all felt that it was observing us in some way. And I was just putting the camera, because of course I'm holding my camera, and I'm just putting the camera to focus and get a good shot of it when our colleague felt motivated to pick up this giant flashlight. I think they call it a torch light, and stick it out the window. His driver's side window was down, and he aimed it at this thing. And when the light hit it, you would expect, if this was just some sort of strange reflective light or some, evanescent mist, that it would have changed it or made it go away or something like that. It didn't. It was just the light shining on this thing, and it just, we felt that it was surprised. We felt that it was hesitating, and then it sort of jittered a little bit, was kind of the word that we all agreed described it. And then it sort of, the light went out from inside of it, kind of like the, the new curly light bulbs that we have, where they sort of power on and power off. This sort of powered down, and then it was just gone. It was just gone. And the property owner, Lee, yelled at the top of his lungs, and he's not really a yeller type of man. He said, "That can't happen in physics. That is not possible with physics." Because he just went. He was gone. And the colleague who was holding the torch got out of the car. He said he wanted to just see if it had somehow fallen, if it was some object that had fallen behind these bushes that we were parked nearby. So he got up, he walked around, he came back, he looked just deathly white. He sat down and he said, "I feel completely sick. I have to leave right now." And so like I said, he's this big guy who's used to being in the outdoors. And so we left at that point. I would have just as soon stayed a bit, but he was probably wise. He might have saved us from getting, kidnapped or taken or what? Who knows? Who knows? Or a mist rolling over us or abducted. Who knows? So that was probably the right thing to do. But we left, and it was just one of the strangest experiences of my life, because it was totally unexplainable by normal means that we know according to our present day science. And the scientist with us was well aware of that, and he just freaked out. He couldn't, and I mean, that's even considering these years of really, really odd things that he has seen on his property. So, and
Right.
he actually just started his own blog. And if you go to WordPress and into the search engine, type Lee, that's Lee, and then his last name was Hampel, Hampel ', and then type Hayfield, all as one word. It should pull up where he's just started posting other light anomalies that as they happen to him.
Okay.
So so you can go there and follow him there. But so that's really one of those experiences where you just know you're not in Kansas anymore, and that there are things we just can't, that are real, but we don't understand their reality.
No, I've had orb sightings where I'm at here, and I can clearly remember the entire event, but the adrenaline that was going through me at the time, because, like you said, you don't expect it. And it's like, this is happening right now. It's happening right now, and you're just, every sensory in your body is firing all at once. And again, kind of like what you were saying, although you had a little bit more mind about you with camera, me, I didn't even think about taking a picture. It wasn't because I was so busy in the witness process of it all that I didn't even think of capturing the moment with a photograph.
Right.
But
that's happened too. Yeah.
Yeah.
In this instance, I was so ready. I had the camera right there, but you do still have to put it up, and aim it, and that was right where I got stopped, and of course once we were all yelling and it disappeared and everything, then I totally forgot about taking a picture. Because you don't. It's the most terrifying thing to my mind is not knowing what it is and what it could do to you. That's terrifying.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I think every single witness probably feels that way, whether they had seen a UFO or an orb or even a cryptid. You don't know what its capabilities are to you, and if you are actually part of a target of some sort. And it is very terrifying. Firsthand, I have not personally seen a cryptid, but I've seen my, small handful of unidentified aerial flying objects. I don't know what they are, but in the time in which you witness it, every sensory is just firing off all at once, and it's very scary. So I could imagine how the deputies must have felt, just seeing an upright walking canine or a Bigfoot, or goodness me, a green mist. Wow.
Exactly. It just changes, what you know of reality. And I'd like to mention too, if anybody does by chance have the Monsters Among Us book, we did another experiment where Lee put up a trail camera in about the same spot where we were parking with a colleague, aimed at about the same spot where the carcasses all were, and where he actually had put another carcass. And 2 years in a row, we got a picture of something black and furry kind of creeping through the hay at different points. And the first one made the book. The second one happened after the book was already going to print, and I couldn't get it in there. But I do have both of them, and it's much more impressive if you see them both, and about a year apart. And there are also accompanying photos of Lee and I took turns going out into the field and doing what we call playing Bobo, because we would pretend to be in the same position at the exact same spot as the creature, and then see how much alike we looked at it and compare the sizes. In both cases, in both cases, it was bigger than either one of us, and you could tell that by just comparing the two. But you can see both of them with the comparison shots at my blog, which is lindagodfrey.com. You don't need WWs or anything, just lindagodfrey.com, and you can find it, in the search engine there, or just scroll back a little bit. It would have been, I can give you the date off.
Oh, they'll find it. Trust me.
Yeah.
I'll find it.
Yeah.
They'll find it. Yeah, not a problem. We'll be distracted by everything else that's there too.
Yeah.
Linda, what is the best way to for anyone that wants to purchase any of your books, including Monsters Among Us?
Well, I do occasionally make appearances. I'm pretty much done with that for this year, but there will be some upcoming ones you can watch on my blog, again, lindagodfrey.com. But you can go also at the blog to my books and bio page, and you'll find a list of all the books and a click to get you started where you can go and buy them. Some of them are available in your brick and mortar stores, especially Weird Michigan just keeps soldiering on there. That's one. And Monsters Among Us, American Monsters is usually definitely in the brick and mortar stores. But again, you can go online to Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com and find most of them there. And you can also at LindaGodfrey.com, you can find a form to write me if you've had your own experience with these unknown upright canines or with other strange creatures. I'm always glad to receive those. And then my email is in there too, my newer email address, which if you'd rather, you can just send me an email.
Oh, yeah. You know, I also was kind of taken back when you did your presentation at the Historical Society, and you'd mentioned how many people email you a week with a certain sighting or an experience that they had. I would have figured, okay, so maybe somebody's like, maybe once a month. It seemed like you were getting hit a few times a week. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I generally get, one. Usually, I would average it at about one a week. Sometimes it's more. Once in a while, I'll skip a week. Sometimes it's 3 or 4. It depends on what I'm doing, where I've been, and how many people have, been in contact with my stories or that sort of thing at the time. But I think that's pretty amazing. That may not sound like a lot, but when you add it up over all the weeks, over all the months of 26 years, it ends up being quite a bit. And they aren't all equal. Right. Some are just really simple, or they might seem kind of off to me, or people might not want them printed anywhere. Sometimes people just have these amazing stories, and they say, please don't share it. I don't want anybody else to hear it, and so I have to honor them, and not use those. Right. And then sometimes I get these full-blown, just incredible reports that check out in lots of ways, and I interview the people and go there if I can, if it's within a reasonable range for me. So it's all pretty interesting.
No, it's very interesting. That's why Jennifer and myself do this show, and why so many of our friends like Shannon LeGros at Into the Fray Radio does a show like this, because it is so very interesting. And we want to know answers, but then I always ask the question, how much do we really want to know? And would we be able to handle it, Yeah. Or would we actually be able to handle it?
There may not be. We may not be able to handle everything we get. Maybe there's a reason that we live at a certain set point in the electromagnetic field reality that we call truth, Maybe there's a reason that we're only usually set up to perceive certain things. And when we go out of that boundary, you can't predict what's going to happen. Right.
You short circuit and you'll never be the same again. And who's to say that, people that have, short circuited and find themselves a complete vegetable, maybe they had that experience and it just was an overload to their brain and their sensory systems. Who knows? It's a fascinating subject, though, but, some of us keep seeking at least little bits of answer here and there, but either way. Linda, I can't thank you enough for joining us over at the Caravan Library of Lore tonight. This has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. And, of course, in the show notes below, you will find all of Linda's information, along with where to get a copy of her books. Linda, thank you again so very much for stopping by.
Well, it was my pleasure. And thanks again so much for having me. It was fun to talk about these things. And I do echo your caution. If anybody ever feels ill at ease gets a bad feeling about something, just stop. You're not under any compulsion by anything in the universe to go beyond your comfort level just to see something.
Absolutely.
Because you're much better. You need to protect yourself first, and I have a certain level, and I always keep at a certain prayer level, and I'm very sensitive to those things myself, and I always advise that to other people. And if you do encounter something, one of these creatures or whatever, just treat it with the respect that you'd have for any wild predator, especially when you don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are wonderful words of advice. Absolutely, and I feel the same way myself. So, yeah, that's a very good piece of advice, is to don't push the boundaries more than what it is that you can handle. You may think you might be able to handle more, but don't. Careful what you wish for. That's what some people say. Yeah, they do get it. Thank you, Linda. Have a wonderful rest of the night, and happy upcoming holidays to you.
Thanks, and special thanks to all of your listeners. I really appreciate it.
Aw, that's very sweet of you. Thank you.
From childhood's hour I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm, and the cloud that took the form, when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view.
Watch your step, lest you move on death. It lay there cold, hidden underneath your last breath. Hold your tongue, still I've gone. The beast that follows is close, but we'll move on. Snake eyes always on my tail. Snake eyes always up ahead. Oh, snake eyes hidden in the dark. Snake eyes better catch a spark. Of peril and impending doom, will you fight or run and hide? When the storm winds blow, will you have the strength to turn the tide? Snake eyes always on my tail. Snake eyes dark. Snake eyes better catch a spark. Snake eyes catch a spark.